Greetings, dear subscribers and casual listeners of my channel. Today we'll talk about the world of Harry Potter, about the misconceptions that even the most devoted fans believe. Some myths exist only in the movies, some in the books, and some are universal. Let's sort them out. Number 1. Muggles know nothing. It seems that the magical community carefully hides its existence. The Ministry of Magic erases memories, invents explanations for magical incidents, and the International Statute of Secrecy has been in place for centuries. But the illusion of absolute secrecy crumbles. Non-magical people know about Azkaban escapes, about the dragon at the Triwizard Tournament, and even about Voldemort's return. The Minister of Magic regularly communicates with the British Prime Minister, warning him about disasters and asking for cooperation. And the parents of Muggle-born children are completely aware of the magical world. So, Muggles know much more than is usually assumed. But the fact that people don't talk about wizards on every street corner can indeed be called a victory. Number 2. Magic outside Hogwarts is impossible. Everyone knows. Students are forbidden to perform magic outside Hogwarts. Harry was almost expelled for breaking this rule in Order of the Phoenix. But few realize it's not that simple. The trace doesn't detect the person, but the location. That's why children in magical families, like the Weasleys, can use spells at home, and the Ministry won't notice. But Harry, living among Muggles, received warnings even for Dobby's tricks. So the ban works selectively. And yet, many families forbid their children from using magic until they come of age, more a matter of upbringing than law. Number 3. The death of Sirius Black. The Order of the Phoenix film shows Bellatrix killed Sirius with an unforgivable curse. But the books give another version. The spell that hit Harry's godfather was red, not green, which means it wasn't Avada Kedavra. McGonagall, for example, survived 5 such curses and lived. Sirius, however, died only because he fell into the Vale of Death. Accident, perhaps, but to claim that Bellatrix killed him outright is incorrect. She struck him with a spell. Fact. But the tragic end was sealed by the Veil itself. Number 4. All Slytherins are villains. Slytherin carries a bad reputation. Most Death Eaters studied there. But the truth is more complex. Slughorn lived far from war, and only at the crucial moment took Hogwarts' side. Andromeda Tonks, Phineas Nigellus Black, and even Severus Snape did not fit the stereotype, and Draco Malfoy, in the end, could not betray. Meanwhile, traitors appeared in other houses too. Pettigrew from Gryffindor, Quirrell and Lockhart from Ravenclaw. Evil is not a house privilege. Number 5. James Potter was a seeker, one of the most widespread mistakes. In the films, it's mentioned that James was a seeker, and in Snape's memories, he plays with a snitch. It seems logical that Harry inherited his father's skills. But J.K. Rowling herself stated, James Potter was a chaser. The error with the title Seeker in the movie was simply the screenwriter's liberty. So the truth is, Harry did not repeat his father's path, but followed his own. Number 6. Where is Durmstrang located? In Goblet of Fire, we meet the students of Durmstrang and Beauxbatons. Since Victor Krum plays for Bulgaria, one might think the school is there, but the school uniform and climate don't match. Rowling revealed Durmstrang is located in northern Scandinavia. Exactly where? A mystery left for fan theories. Number 7. Dumbledore and Grindelwald. After Rowling's revelation about Albus's feelings for Grindelwald, fans still argue. Some see it as an important part of canon, others as a publicity move. But the author clarified, Dumbledore never had a romantic relationship, only youthful admiration and a friendship that turned tragic. How to interpret this? Each fan decides for themselves. Number 8. Voldemort couldn't love. Tom Riddle's inability to love was not a curse placed on him at birth, but the result of how he was conceived and raised. Merop Gaunt used a love potion to bind Tom Riddle Sr., and when its effects wore off, he fled, leaving her alone and broken. The child born from that false union never experienced real affection. In Half-Blood Prince, Dumbledore explains, he was conceived under a love potion. He was not born of love, and so he never could understand it. Voldemort's coldness was learned, not inherited. His orphanage years deepened that emptiness. Mrs. Cole, the matron, described him to Dumbledore as odd, secretive, and with a nasty streak. Tom grew up without a single bond of kindness. When Dumbledore visited him for the first time, offering him a place at Hogwarts, the boy's first instinct was suspicion. Love was foreign to him. It was not that Voldemort was magically barred from feeling it. It was that he had never seen or felt it in his life. His tragedy is not that he was incapable, but that he never had the chance to learn. Number 9. Hermione was always a perfect student. Hermione Granger's reputation as the perfect student hides her rebellious streak. In Chamber of Secrets, she masterminded the brewing of Polyjuice Potion, a spell so advanced it belonged to the restricted section of the library. She persuaded Harry and Ron to steal ingredients from Professor Snape's stores. The risk was expulsion, yet she pressed on. When Ron protested, she snapped, "You don't think I'm going to take risks for this, do you?" For Hermione, rules bent easily when truth was on the line. Her defiance only grew with time. In Prisoner of Azkaban, she wielded the time turner not just for classes, but to manipulate fate itself. Saving Buckbeak and Sirius required breaking more than one ministry law. McGonagall had trusted her with the device for academics, not for rewriting history. Yet Hermione never hesitated. She understood the danger, but chose action. Her brilliance often gave her the tools, but her conscience guided how she used them. By Order of the Phoenix, her rebellion became open war. She co-founded Dumbledore's army, teaching students spells against Umbridge's decrees. She even tricked a group of Slytherins into being trapped in the Room of Requirement, showing a slyness worthy of Slytherin itself. "You're going to have to break the rules this time, Harry," she admitted, embracing defiance as necessity. Hermione was indeed brilliant, but never flawless. She was a girl who knew the rules by heart and broke them whenever her heart demanded it. Number 10. Hogwarts is the safest school. Hogwarts was advertised as the finest magical school in Britain, but safety was never its strongest feature. From their very first year, Harry, Ron, and Hermione were sent into the Forbidden Forest as punishment, where they encountered centaurs and the monstrous Acromantula Aragog. A year later, Harry found himself dueling a full-grown basilisk beneath the school, armed with nothing but the sword of Gryffindor and the loyalty of Fawkes. These were not minor accidents. They were life-or-death battles faced by children. The danger only grew. In Goblet of Fire, the Triwizard Tournament was hosted inside the castle walls. What began as a test of skill turned deadly when Cedric Diggory was murdered by Lord Voldemort himself. The tournament, meant to be controlled, became a trap, and the risk was not limited to special events. Throughout the books, the castle is full of shifting staircases, violent portraits, and magical creatures that could easily harm an unprepared student. Even the subjects were dangerous. In Prisoner of Azkaban, students learned how to approach a hippogriff, a lesson that ended with Draco Malfoy nearly clawed to pieces. By the final book, the illusion of safety collapsed completely. Hogwarts became the battlefield where Voldemort's forces clashed with teachers and students alike. Spells shattered walls, giants roamed the grounds, and countless students fought for their lives. Dumbledore himself once admitted in Order of the Phoenix, "We have always known that Hogwarts is not, and never has been, a safe place." The truth is that the castle was a place of learning and courage, but never a sanctuary. Number 11. All the Dursleys hated Harry. The Dursleys spent years making Harry's life miserable. They locked him in the cupboard under the stairs, starved him, and treated him as less than human. To any reader, it looked like pure hatred. Yet in Deathly Hallows, there is a flicker of something else. Dudley, who once mocked Harry endlessly, stops before leaving Privet Drive and says awkwardly, "I don't think you're a waste of space." For Harry, who had expected nothing but contempt, these words struck harder than any insult. This moment revealed that Dudley was not as heartless as he appeared. He had grown. Living alongside Harry during those dangerous years, even if he never admitted it, made him realize the boy he once bullied was also family. Harry, stunned, could only mumble back, "A thank you." Rowling paints the scene with unease, but it carries the weight of reconciliation. Petunia's silence is even more powerful. She stands at the door wanting to speak, but no words come. The bitterness of losing her sister Lily, the envy of her magical gift, had ruled her life. In Deathly Hallows, she almost says something before leaving, but swallows it back. Dumbledore once told Harry, "She may have taken you grudgingly, furiously, unwillingly, bitterly, yet she still took you." That act, however twisted, was a form of love. The Dursleys were not demons. They were deeply flawed, trapped by fear and jealousy. Their cruelty was real, but so were their cracks of humanity. Dudley's single-kind sentence and Petunia's unsaid words prove they were not without feeling. They were tragic figures, unable to rise above their own smallness, but not utterly devoid of care for the boy they once tried to erase. Number 12. The invisibility cloak is just another magical item. When Harry first received the invisibility cloak on Christmas morning, it seemed like a prank gift. The note said simply, "Your father left this in my possession before he died. Use it well." Harry grinned, slipped under it, and vanished before Ron's eyes. At that moment, it looked like another fun magical object, no different from the trick sweets the Weasley twins loved. Ordinary cloaks existed, as Ron later explained, though they faded with age and lost their power. But the truth of Harry's cloak was different. In Deathly Hallows, Xenophilius Lovegood tells the tale of the Deathly Hallows, 3 gifts given by Death himself. The cloak is described as the only true halo that never betrayed its owner. Unlike the other halos, it was a true cloak of invisibility, perfect and enduring. This was not a trinket. It was a relic, passed down through the Peveril line, eventually into the hands of James Potter, and then to Harry. It never wore out, never weakened, and never failed to hide its wearer. The cloak also shaped Harry's journey in ways fans often forget. He used it to explore the castle at night, to eavesdrop, and to uncover secrets. Yet its greatest purpose came in the forest, when Harry walked to his death. Wrapped in the cloak, he passed Death Eaters and even Voldemort himself. Rowling writes, "He did not need to draw the cloak closer. It was enough." In that moment, the cloak fulfilled its destiny, guiding its master to a choice made freely, without fear. To call it just another artifact is to miss the point. This was the cloak that completed the legend of the Hallows, the object that gave Harry the power not to conquer death, but to face it. Unlike Dumbledore's Elder Wand or the lure of the Resurrection Stone, the cloak offered no corruption. It offered only protection and loyalty, and in that quiet, steady loyalty lay the secret of Harry's final victory. Number 13. Hagrid was expelled forever. Rubeus Hagrid's story is often reduced to a single phrase. He was expelled from Hogwarts. Many fans repeat it as if it were the whole truth, but the real events are more complicated. In his 3rd year, Hagrid was accused of opening the Chamber of Secrets. Tom Riddle framed him, pointing to the young giant's fondness for dangerous creatures. The school accepted the accusation, and Hagrid's wand was snapped. Yet that was not the end of his life at Hogwarts. Albus Dumbledore, then only a professor, stepped forward. He believed in Hagrid's innocence and argued for mercy. As a result, Hagrid was allowed to stay on the grounds, not as a student, but as gamekeeper. This was not a full exile. It was a compromise. Dumbledore's protection ensured that Hogwarts would remain Hagrid's home. In Chamber of Secrets, Hagrid himself tells Harry, "Been expelled, 3rd year. They found out I'd been keeping a bit of a creature." His shame is clear, but so is the fact that he never truly left the castle. Hagrid's broken wand is another key detail. He hid its remains inside a pink umbrella and continued to use it in secret. In Philosopher's Stone, he taps the umbrella against Dudley Dursley and growls, "Budge up, ya great lump," before giving him a pig's tail. The magic works. The Ministry never punished him further, which means his case was unusual. He was not stripped of magic entirely, nor cut off from it forever. His life was limited, not destroyed. Even later, in Half-Blood Prince, Argus Filch sneers, "He never finished his education, did he?" That single line reveals the truth. Hagrid was denied the chance to graduate, but he was not expelled forever in the way many imagine. He remained a part of the school's heart, a bridge between staff and students, a reminder that even in disgrace, Hogwarts could still be a home. Number 14. Dumbledore's Phoenix was immortal. When Albus Dumbledore fell from the astronomy tower, silence hung over Hogwarts, and then, in the distance, a sound rose, a haunting cry, piercing the night. A phoenix song was rising over the castle. Rowling writes in Half-Blood Prince, it was Fawkes mourning his master. His lament wrapped the halls in sorrow, then faded, and with that the bird vanished. He did not linger to shield the school. He did not join the order. He simply left. Many readers clung to the belief that Fawkes would stay, that he would guide the resistance against Voldemort. After all, a phoenix can be reborn from its ashes. Isn't that the same as immortality? But Rowling never painted him as eternal. She tied him to Dumbledore, not to Hogwarts, not to Harry, not even to the Order of the Phoenix. His song was not a promise of return. It was a farewell. Phoenixes do not die in the ordinary sense. Their flames bring them back, but they are not bound to serve forever. Fawkes chose to leave once his master was gone, just as he had chosen to come when Dumbledore needed him most. Think of Chamber of Secrets when the bird appeared in the chamber and blinded the basilisk. The phoenix had swooped down upon the serpent's head, Rowling tells us. That was loyalty, not destiny. It was devotion, not immortality. So the myth of the immortal companion is nothing more than wishful thinking. Fawkes did not remain because Dumbledore was the reason he was there. His bond was personal, deep, and singular. Once broken, the bird departed. Not even magic could hold him to a place where his master's voice was gone. The phoenix lives on, yes, but far away from the halls of Hogwarts, carrying his song into the unknown. Number 15. Gryffindors are always brave. Gryffindor is remembered as the House of Courage, the sanctuary of lions, the birthplace of countless heroes who faced the darkness without trembling. Yet the myth that every Gryffindor was born fearless is as misleading as believing every Slytherin was destined to turn evil. The Sorting Hat never promised perfection. It only whispered tendencies, qualities hidden deep within students that might blossom or wither. To assume that every Gryffindor lived up to the grandeur of Godric Gryffindor himself is to overlook the flaws and insecurities that made these young wizards painfully human. Consider Lavender Brown, a student whose name is often buried beneath the shadows of Harry, Hermione, and Ron. She was not remembered for daring duels or grand acts of defiance. Instead, she was defined by giggles in the common room, hearts drawn in the margins of parchment, and an obsession with divination that others dismissed as frivolous. When the darkest times came, Lavender was present in the Battle of Hogwarts, yet her bravery was not the steady flame people expected of a Gryffindor. Her shrieks during danger, her tendency to lean on others, revealed that courage was not her defining trait. She represented the truth that Gryffindor also sheltered the ordinary, those who wished for love and comfort more than glory. In her, we see that bravery is not always loud or unshakable. Sometimes it flickers, fragile as a candle. Cormac McLagan is another name often overlooked in this discussion. Brash, arrogant, and full of inflated confidence, he strutted around as if Gryffindor were his personal stage. He demanded attention on the Quidditch field, interrupting Harry's strategies with unsolicited advice. Convinced he was always right, the Sorting Hat placed him among the lions, but did his behavior reveal the nobility of courage? Hardly. Cormac was bold in voice but timid in substance, willing to take risks only when applause might follow. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, his disastrous performance as keeper during a Quidditch match, after boasting incessantly, revealed his lack of true grit. He was not driven by bravery, but by ego. Gryffindor tolerated his kind because the house was never about perfection, it was about potential. Then there was Neville Longbottom, the boy who arrived at Hogwarts shy, forgetful, and often the target of ridicule. "Why is it always me?" he once lamented after yet another humiliation, a line that painted him as the embodiment of weakness. Many saw Neville as the very opposite of the Gryffindor stereotype. Yet, the story of Neville is the most powerful counterpoint to the misconception that Gryffindors are born brave. His courage was not innate, it was forged. In Philosopher's Stone, when he stood trembling in the common room, confronting Harry, Ron, and Hermione with the words, "You can't go out, you'll be caught again," he revealed that bravery is not measured by absence of fear, but by acting despite it. Dumbledore himself later awarded Neville points for standing up to his friends, declaring that courage is often found in the most unlikely places. Neville's journey culminated years later in Deathly Hallows. The boy, once mocked for forgetting passwords, rose as a symbol of resistance. He led Dumbledore's army when Harry was absent, endured torture at the hands of the Carrows, and when Voldemort demanded obedience, Neville stepped forward. He pulled the sword of Gryffindor from the sorting hat and cut down Nagini, the Dark Lord's last Horcrux. This arc revealed the truth. Gryffindor bravery is not universal, not automatic, but a choice made under the weight of fear and pain. Neville's transformation was the exception that proved the rule, showing that not all Gryffindors started as heroes. The house itself, if examined closely, was filled with contradictions. Parvati Patil, much like Lavender, gravitated more toward glittering dresses, gossip, and divination than duels or danger. Seamus Finnegan was notorious for blowing things up accidentally rather than for performing heroic feats. Even Percy Weasley, ambitious and rule-bound, once abandoned loyalty to his family for the Ministry's favor. None of them lacked value, but their paths demonstrate that Gryffindor was not a monolith of bravery. The Sorting Hat sensed slivers of courage, perhaps buried under layers of insecurity or ambition, but it did not guarantee that such courage would always surface. One must remember that Gryffindor was also a house of pride. James Potter and Sirius Black embodied daring and boldness, but in their youth, that boldness often twisted into cruelty. Their bullying of Severus Snape in the middle of the courtyard, witnessed by Lily Evans, was not an act of heroism, but of arrogance. Here lies the uncomfortable truth. Gryffindor courage often walked hand in hand with recklessness. Sirius himself admitted later that he was an idiot in school, more concerned with showing off than with wisdom. This arrogance, too, was part of Gryffindor's legacy, reminding us that bravery is complicated. The myth that every Gryffindor is a hero becomes even shakier when one remembers Peter Pettigrew. He wore the red and gold, laughed in the Gryffindor common room, shared secrets with James, Sirius, and Remus. Yet when the storm of Voldemort's rise came, Peter's courage evaporated. He betrayed his friends, delivering James and Lily to their deaths, framing Sirius, and hiding in the shadows as a rat for 12 years. Dumbledore once said, "It is our choices, Harry, that show what we truly are, far more than our abilities." Peter chose fear, and though he once bore the crest of Gryffindor, he became the ultimate proof that belonging to the house did not seal one's destiny as brave. Number 16. Harry was the only chosen one. Many readers of the Harry Potter series fall into the comfortable belief that Harry was the only true chosen one, the single boy destined to confront Lord Voldemort. Yet when the prophecy made by Sybil Trelawney was first revealed, the words carried a broader meaning than most remember. The prophecy did not whisper the name Harry Potter. Instead, it described in enigmatic language a child born as the 7th month dies. These words could apply not only to Harry James Potter, but equally to Neville Longbottom, the shy, clumsy boy who seemed so far removed from heroic legend. The story of the Chosen One is not as inevitable as fans sometimes think. It is a tale shaped by choice, chance, and the will of the Dark Lord himself. The prophecy heard by Dumbledore was both precise and ambiguous. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches, born to those who have thrice defied him, born as the 7th month dies. These words fit two children. Harry was born on July 31st, son of James and Lily Potter, members of the Order of the Phoenix who had defied Voldemort on 3 separate occasions. But Neville was also born in late July, the son of Frank and Alice Longbottom, both Aurors, both fighters in the same order, both people who had also resisted the Dark Lord 3 times. 2 infants, both marked by the prophecy's conditions, both living under a shadow they could not yet understand. What transformed the prophecy from possibility into reality was not fate carved in stone, but a decision made by Voldemort. Haunted by his obsession with immortality and his fear of death, he could not ignore the words of the seer. He sought out the child whom he believed to be his greatest threat, but in choosing, he also created that very threat. He went after Harry, not Neville, and thus by his own hand determined who the prophecy would truly describe. This twist of irony is one of the great thematic threads in Rowling's narrative. Voldemort, by trying to prevent his downfall, forged it himself. When Voldemort entered the Potter household in Godric's Hollow on that October night in 1981, he was not only murdering parents and attempting to destroy a baby, he was also writing history, selecting the boy who would bear the weight of prophecy. Lily Potter's sacrifice, her refusal to step aside when Voldemort offered her life, added another layer to Harry's destiny. The love that shielded Harry was not part of the prophecy, it was part of the human choice of a mother. Yet without Voldemort's attack, Harry would never have been the boy who lived. Without Voldemort's decision, the world would never have seen Harry as the chosen one. If Voldemort had made another choice, if his paranoia had driven him toward Neville instead, the wizarding world would have hailed Neville Longbottom as its savior. The attack might have left him with a lightning-shaped scar, not Harry. He would have grown up with a tragic legacy, the only survivor of a Dark Lord's curse. His childhood might still have been marked by tragedy, though in another form, for Frank and Alice Longbottom were tortured into madness soon after Voldemort's fall. It is chilling to imagine Neville carrying the mantle of the Chosen One, while also visiting his parents in St. Mungo's, unable to speak with them, unable to know them. The burden of prophecy would have sat heavily on his shoulders. Rowling herself underscores this fragile boundary between possibility and reality. In Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, Dumbledore tells Harry, "The odd thing, Harry, is that it may not have meant you at all." Sybil's prophecy could have applied to two boys, both born at the end of July, but the Dark Lord chose you, and it is because of that choice that you are the one marked as his equal. These words are crucial because they strip away the illusion of an inevitable destiny. There was nothing divine or cosmically inevitable about Harry's role. It was Voldemort's fear that set him apart, Voldemort's choice that gave Harry his scar, Voldemort's arrogance that marked Harry as the chosen one. This revelation deepens the theme of choice that runs through the series. Time and again, Rowling insists that it is not our abilities that define us, but our choices. Harry's status as the Chosen One is not a passive crown placed on his head by fate. It is an active responsibility he embraces because of the path Voldemort forced upon him. The prophecy said, "And the Dark Lord will mark him as his equal." It was Voldemort who ensured those words came true. Harry might have been another boy in Gryffindor Tower, brave but ordinary, if Voldemort had gone elsewhere. Instead, he became the one person Voldemort could never ignore. The story takes on another layer of irony when we consider Neville's life. He grew up in the long shadow of Harry, awkward, timid, often the subject of ridicule from Draco Malfoy and even from fellow Gryffindors. Yet, in the final battle at Hogwarts, Neville proved his heroism by drawing the sword of Gryffindor from the sorting hat and striking down Nagini, Voldemort's final Horcrux. Without Neville's courage, Voldemort would not have fallen. The boy who might have been the chosen one ended up delivering the decisive blow that enabled Harry to succeed. This intertwining of destinies shows that the prophecy did not diminish Neville's importance. It merely shifted the spotlight. He was still part of the story, still a hero, still a symbol of bravery. Number 17. Spells have only one purpose. Of all the misconceptions that circulate among readers of Harry Potter, one of the most persistent is the belief that spells are fixed, rigid tools with only one possible function. This narrow view, although convenient, strips the wizarding world of its complexity. J.K. Rowling never designed magic to be a set of mechanical commands. Instead, it shifts, adapts, and grows according to the witch or wizard using it. To see spells merely as one-trick devices is to miss the subtlety of their true nature. Each spell is not simply an effect, but a piece of living magic that can be stretched and reinterpreted. Perhaps the clearest example is the famous disarming charm, Expelliarmus. Fans who remember Harry repeatedly using it in duels often label it the disarming spell, as if its only function is to knock wands from enemies. Yet the truth is far broader. In Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, during the duel with Lord Voldemort in the graveyard, Harry cast Expelliarmus not to snatch away a wand, but to defend against the Cruciatus curse. The text describes Harry raising his wand in desperation, shouting, "Expelliarmus," as the pain of Voldemort's Cruciatus threatened to engulf him. It became a shield, a surge of power that collided with the killing magic of Voldemort. The priori incantatem that followed was not born of a disarming trick, but of the spell's deeper potential. In Harry's hands, Expelliarmus became a statement of defiance, bending beyond its label to act as pure resistance. The layers of Expelliarmus grow richer when considering its symbolic weight. Harry's reliance on it in the Deathly Hallows, when other wizards favored more aggressive curses, demonstrates that the spell was more than a trick. It was part of his identity. Lupin scolded him after the Battle of the Seven Potters, warning that Death Eaters recognized him precisely because he used Expelliarmus. Yet Harry refused to abandon it. The disarming charm became a form of non-lethal combat, a moral choice that stood in contrast to the unforgivable curses wielded by his enemies. For Harry, the spell was not just an effect, but a philosophy. It proves that magic's meaning is shaped by intent and conviction, not by dictionary definitions. Another spell that fans misinterpret as a simple tool is Lumos. At first glance, it is a wizard's flashlight, brightening dark corners of Hogwarts or gloomy corridors. But in Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Rowling offers hints that Lumos can reveal more than darkness. When Harry and Ron wander the deserted school searching for clues, the charm's light often flickers across inscriptions and symbols that otherwise remain hidden. The novels never state outright that Lumos is a detection spell, yet the way it interacts with hidden writing suggests that light itself has magical agency. When Hermione later uses bluebell flames to protect and illuminate, it becomes clear that light is one of the most versatile forms of spellwork. Lumos is not just brightness, it is revelation. The symbolism of Lumos reaches further in the Half-Blood Prince, when Dumbledore uses fire and light to repel the Inferi in the cave. While not Lumos in name, the principle is the same. Illumination is life. Light drives away the darkness of death. Harry, holding his wand aloft with Lumos, inherits the same symbolic gesture. To reduce the spell to a wand light is to miss its narrative role as a beacon of clarity and truth. Rowling's world uses light not only as practicality, but as metaphor, and spells like Lumos expand beyond their first impression to carry layers of meaning. A far darker example arises with Avada Kedavra. In the main Harry Potter series, it is presented as the ultimate weapon of destruction. Green light, instant death, no countercurse. Fans often interpret it as nothing more than a killing tool. But Rowling complicated this in her Fantastic Beasts spin-offs, where its history and origins are given greater texture. The whispers among dark wizards hint that the spell did not begin as simple murder, but as a corruption of older magic, twisting life energy into its inverse. This implication, that killing is not the spell's only dimension, makes the curse both more terrifying and more enigmatic. It is not just death on command, but the perversion of life itself. Consider how Voldemort employs Avada Kedavra. For him, it is not merely efficient execution, but a symbol of domination. The green flash is an announcement, a way of showing the world that life is expendable. In Goblet of Fire, when he resurrects himself and demonstrates the curse on a bound Muggle, the act is theatrical, a spectacle meant to inspire dread. The killing curse, in this sense, becomes more than death. It becomes terror, fear woven into magical form. Fans who see it as the spell that kills miss its narrative weight as an emblem of Voldemort's philosophy. Equally telling is how Harry survives Avada Kedavra multiple times. The spell's supposed absolute nature collapses when confronted with sacrifice, wand lore, and ancient magic. Lily's protection, the twin cores of wands, and Harry's own willingness to die each twist the curse into something it should not be able to withstand. This reveals that Avada Kedavra is not immutable. Even the most definitive spell bends before deeper forces. Magic, Rowling suggests, is not a list of fixed rules but a living dialogue between intent, protection, and destiny. Moving away from the unforgivable curses, even minor charms display this adaptability. The simple levitation spell Wingardium Leviosa, taught by Professor Flitwick in the first book, is used primarily for lifting feathers in class. Yet in the Deathly Hallows, Hermione employs it to move a fallen body. Ron uses it to manipulate objects in battle. What began as schoolyard practice evolves into a survival tool. The incantation stays the same, but the effect adapts depending on context, weight, and emotional urgency. The fan assumption that levitation equals move small objects ignores the creative elasticity of such spells. Number 18. All Malfoys were loyal to Voldemort. The image of the Malfoy family has always loomed large in the minds of Harry Potter readers, and for good reason. From their first appearance in Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, where Lucius Malfoy drops Tom Riddle's diary into Ginny Weasley's cauldron, to their presence in the final battle at Hogwarts, they are portrayed as antagonists whose elegance, wealth, and cruelty seem to fit naturally alongside Voldemort's ideology. Yet this assumption that all Malfoys were unwavering supporters of the Dark Lord is one of the most enduring misconceptions among fans. The truth, when examined through the details of the books, paints a far more nuanced and human picture of a family driven not by ideological devotion, but by fear, self-preservation, and the desire to protect their own. Lucius Malfoy's allegiance to Voldemort is often taken at face value, but even in his early appearances, his motivations were never about the purity of Voldemort's cause. Lucius was a man of influence who craved status in both the Ministry and among the old pureblood families. In Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, when confronted by Dumbledore after the diary incident, Lucius does not even defend Voldemort's goals, but rather snarls about his own family's honor. "You will find that I will not be insulted in this fashion, Dumbledore." His outrage lies in his reputation being challenged, not in the supposed fall of his master. Later, during Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, when Voldemort returns, Lucius is among the first summoned. But his hesitation in front of the Dark Lord is telling. He grovels, blames others, and tries to reassert loyalty, suggesting that he never expected Voldemort to rise again and had been far more comfortable playing the part of a respectable wizard in the Ministry's halls. Narcissa Malfoy stands out as perhaps the most misunderstood member of the family. Many readers lump her together with Bellatrix Lestrange, her fanatically loyal sister, but Narcissa's actions speak in the opposite direction. She was never branded with the Dark Mark and never shown in the texts to have participated in Voldemort's campaigns of terror. Her concerns were focused on her husband and especially her son. The most pivotal moment of her character comes in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, during the Battle of Hogwarts, when she approaches Harry in the Forbidden Forest. Voldemort orders her to check if Harry is dead, and when Harry breathes quietly beneath her touch, she makes a choice that defines the Malfoy family's true nature. She whispers, "Is Draco alive? Is he in the castle?" And upon hearing Harry's quiet "yes," she lies directly to Voldemort, declaring Harry dead. In this single act, Narcissa effectively betrays the Dark Lord, not because she suddenly sided with Harry, but because her maternal instinct outweighed any allegiance to Voldemort's ideology. Draco Malfoy's story is perhaps the clearest evidence that the Malfoys were never true believers. Tasked with an impossible mission in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince to kill Albus Dumbledore, Draco spends much of the book unraveling under the pressure. He attempts to fix the vanishing cabinet. He plots poisonings and cursed objects. But when the final moment arrives, standing on the astronomy tower with a defenseless Dumbledore, Draco cannot bring himself to utter the fatal words. "Draco, Draco, you are not a killer," Dumbledore tells him, and the truth of this statement is proven by his trembling wand hand and his tear-streaked face. Had Draco truly been a devoted Death Eater, this moment would have been his triumph. Instead, it reveals him as a boy, caught in the web of his family's choices, driven by fear of Voldemort rather than faith in his vision. The Malfoys' actions during the Second Wizarding War also highlight their pragmatism. When Voldemort seizes control of the Ministry and uses Malfoy Manor as a base, the family does not celebrate his dominance. Instead, they are seen walking on eggshells, terrified of displeasing him or his inner circle. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, the scene in Malfoy Manor when Harry, Ron, and Hermione are captured underscores this reality. Bellatrix, rather than Lucius or Narcissa, takes control. The Malfoys stand on the sidelines, hesitant and cautious. Lucius even pleads for Voldemort's favor by being the one to summon him, but his voice shakes with desperation. These are not the acts of loyal lieutenants. They are the survival strategies of people trapped in an alliance they no longer want. The evolution of Lucius Malfoy over the course of the series further undermines the idea of his unwavering loyalty. In the Order of the Phoenix, he is still seen manipulating the Ministry and leading Death Eater groups. But after the disastrous mission at the Department of Mysteries, where the prophecy is lost and Voldemort is revealed publicly, Lucius suffers Voldemort's wrath. By the Half-Blood Prince, he is disgraced, stripped of power, and imprisoned in Azkaban. His absence from the story is telling. When Voldemort entrusts Draco with the task of killing Dumbledore, it is a punishment directed not at Draco, but at Lucius. Voldemort uses the Malfoys' vulnerability to ensure obedience. Lucius's fall from prideful aristocrat to broken man illustrates that his service to Voldemort was transactional. When the rewards of power vanished and fear became the only motivator, Lucius's demeanor shifted to one of survival, not devotion. Narcissa's choice in the Forbidden Forest is not a sudden betrayal, but the culmination of her character throughout the series. In The Half-Blood Prince, she defies Voldemort's expectations by seeking out Severus Snape in secret. Alongside Bellatrix, she begs him to protect Draco during his mission. If Draco fails, she pleads, "Will you kill him?" This act of desperation reveals a mother willing to risk Voldemort's wrath for her son's life, unlike Bellatrix, who scolds her sister for her weakness. Narcissa's priority is not ideology but blood, her family. This stark difference sets the Malfoys apart from Voldemort's true believers, who valued ideology above even their own kin. Draco's reluctance in the final book further emphasizes his lack of conviction. When Harry, Ron, and Hermione are brought to Malfoy Manor, Bellatrix demands Draco confirm Harry's identity. He hesitates, his answer deliberately uncertain, muttering, I can't be sure." This refusal to expose Harry outright shows that Draco's loyalty to Voldemort is not absolute. Though still afraid and resentful, he cannot bring himself to solidify Voldemort's power when given the chance. Later, during the Battle of Hogwarts, Draco is seen caught between sides, rescued not once but twice by Harry himself. That Harry chooses to save Draco is not accidental. It is a recognition that Draco was never beyond redemption and never fully Voldemort's. The Malfoy family's behavior after the Battle of Hogwarts is another piece of evidence often overlooked. When Voldemort falls and Harry emerges victorious, the Malfoys do not flee or attack. They simply stand together, apart from both sides, clinging to one another. Their isolation on the battlefield speaks volumes. They were never truly part of Voldemort's inner circle, nor were they embraced by the Order. They had spent years maneuvering for safety, and in the end, they sought only to remain intact as a family. Their survival, more than anything, was their victory. The contrast between Narcissa and Bellatrix is also essential in understanding this misconception. Bellatrix, as a foil, represents what true fanaticism looks like: wild devotion, sadism, and complete surrender to Voldemort's will. She revels in torture, mocks her victims, and dies screaming his name. Narcissa, in contrast, betrays him in silence. This juxtaposition allows readers to see that the Malfoys' association with Voldemort was never about love or devotion. It was a mask they wore to protect themselves from annihilation in a world ruled by fear. It is also important to note that the Malfoys' cowardice does not absolve them of guilt. Lucius still facilitated Voldemort's return and endangered countless lives. Draco still tormented classmates, especially Hermione, with cruelty rooted in blood prejudice. Narcissa still stood silently by while atrocities were committed, but to confuse their complicity with ideological devotion is to miss the subtle distinction Rowling crafted. The Malfoys are opportunists and survivors, not zealots. Their cowardice is no less dangerous, but it is different in kind from Bellatrix's blind faith or Voldemort's madness. One of the most striking lines that encapsulates their role comes from Dumbledore himself in The Half-Blood Prince. Speaking to Draco, he says, "You are not a killer, Draco. Draco, years ago, I knew a boy who made all the wrong choices." In that moment, Dumbledore identifies the core truth about the Malfoys. They are defined by wrong choices born of fear and pride, not by any noble belief in Voldemort's cause. They are mirrors of what happens when power and reputation matter more than conscience. By examining their actions with care, the supposed unwavering loyalty of the Malfoys dissolves. They emerge as tragic figures of cowardice, clinging desperately to survival in a war that forced them to choose sides they never fully embraced. Lucius serves until it costs him everything. Narcissa betrays Voldemort the moment her son's life is in question. Draco falters again and again when tasked with carrying out true evil. Their story is not one of ideological devotion, but of fear, self-preservation, and family above all. In the end, the Malfoys remind us of an uncomfortable truth about human nature. Evil is not only upheld by the fanatics who believe in it, but also by the cowards who comply to protect themselves. The Malfoys were not Voldemort's true disciples. They were frightened aristocrats clinging to power until it failed them, and then clinging only to one another. To mistake that fear for faith is to misunderstand their role in the story entirely. Number 19. Draco and Harry were mortal enemies. Of all the rivalries born in the corridors of Hogwarts, none seems to capture the imagination of fans quite like that between Harry Potter and Draco Malfoy. It is easy to paint them as mortal enemies. Harry, the boy who lived, bearing the weight of prophecy and destiny, and Draco, the heir of a pure-blood family steeped in dark traditions. From their first meeting in the book Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, when Draco insulted Ron Weasley and extended a hand that Harry refused to shake, the groundwork was laid for a rivalry that seemed eternal. Yet this simplified narrative does not hold when one studies the later books with care. The truth is more complex. Their connection was not merely about hatred, but about circumstance, pressure, and choices that could have led them down different paths had fate allowed. The sixth book, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, is a turning point for understanding Draco. Up until then, he had largely served as a sneering antagonist in the background, mocking Harry, Hermione, and Ron with his usual arrogance. But beneath the facade of superiority, the boy who once strutted through the corridors of Hogwarts is revealed as someone under immense strain. When Voldemort assigns him the task of killing Albus Dumbledore, Draco is not proud or confident. He is terrified. In the boys' bathroom scene, where moaning Myrtle discovers him sobbing uncontrollably, readers finally see the reality. Draco Malfoy was a 16-year-old boy caught in a trap of fear and expectation. J.K. Rowling writes, "He was crying. He was not alone in the bathroom. He was with moaning Myrtle, and he was sobbing, his face buried in his hands." That moment shatters the illusion of Draco as a cold-blooded rival and forces us to see him as a child, drowning in a mission far beyond his abilities. It is in that same chapter that Harry enters, and the fragile balance between them explodes. Convinced that Draco is up to dark deeds, Harry uses a spell he found in the Half-Blood Prince's annotated textbook. The incantation Sectum Sempra slashes Draco's chest open, leaving him bleeding heavily on the bathroom floor. What happens next is critical. Harry, horrified by what he has done, stands frozen in shock, and it is Severus. Snape, who rushes in to save Draco's life. This moment is far removed from the playful animosity of earlier books. This is no prank gone wrong, no schoolyard duel. It is a brush with death, and Draco's panic shows that beneath the rivalry lies something darker. The possibility that hatred can turn into tragedy if left unchecked. Yet this scene also demonstrates that Harry never truly wished Draco's death. His horror, his guilt, and his fear afterward show that Draco was not his mortal enemy, but rather someone entangled in the same war, though on the opposite side. Draco's humanity continues to break through during the climactic events at the end of Half-Blood Prince. When the Death Eaters invade Hogwarts, Draco lowers his wand in the tower when facing Dumbledore. He hesitates. He stalls. His heart is not in murder. Dumbledore recognizes this, saying softly, "You are not a killer, Draco." The weight of these words cannot be overstated. Draco's refusal to deliver the fatal blow, despite the fear of Voldemort's wrath, demonstrates that hatred was never his driving force. The pressure of family honor, the terror of Voldemort's punishment, and the manipulation of his parents all stood behind him, yet Draco did not cross that line. In that hesitation lies the same truth that shapes his relationship with Harry. He is not a villain to Harry's hero, but a teenager forced into roles neither he nor Harry ever truly chose. By the time we arrive at Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, the lines of their connection grow even more intricate. During the Battle of Hogwarts, it is Harry who repeatedly becomes the unlikely protector of Draco's life. When Crabbe sets fiend fire loose in the Room of Requirement, a spell so wild it devours everything in sight, Harry, Ron, and Hermione are the ones who save Draco, along with Goyle. Harry seized Draco's arm, and together they dragged Goyle out of the flames. Rowling writes, "This is no small detail. Amidst chaos and destruction, when vengeance could have seemed justified, Harry chooses to risk his life to ensure Draco survives. If they had been truly mortal enemies, sworn to destroy each other at all costs, this act would make no sense. Instead, it underlines that their bond was rooted not in eternal hatred, but in the constant, uneasy recognition of each other's humanity. The very fact that Harry instinctively saves Draco more than once in the final book adds layers of irony to their supposed rivalry. Later in the courtyard, when Harry duels Voldemort, Narcissa Malfoy lies to the Dark Lord, declaring Harry dead, because her only concern is the safety of her son. That maternal act of love shifts the balance of the war, and Draco's existence indirectly contributes to Voldemort's downfall. Harry and Draco, once boys who traded insults in the Great Hall, are tied together in a far more complex web of survival, family, and reluctant understanding than many fans acknowledge. To understand the misconception of Harry and Draco as mortal enemies, one must also look at how the two boys mirrored each other's journeys. Both were marked by circumstances outside their control. Harry bore the lightning-shaped scar, an eternal reminder of his place in the war against Voldemort. Draco bore the name Malfoy, tied to centuries of pure blood expectations and to a family ensnared by the Dark Lord's grasp. Each boy was pressured to live up to an image larger than himself. For Harry, it was the savior. For Draco, it was the loyal servant of Voldemort. This mirror structure shows us that their animosity was less about personal hatred and more about the roles imposed on them by the wizarding world. It is worth noting how their interactions often carried undertones of envy and fascination, not merely disdain. Draco, upon meeting Harry for the first time, recognized instantly the celebrity status surrounding him and tried to draw him into his circle, offering him the path of the pure-blood elite. Harry, rejecting that offer, immediately set them at odds. Yet the rejection also sparked Draco's obsession with besting Harry. Throughout their years at Hogwarts, Draco often sought to outshine him, whether by boasting about his father's influence, trying to sabotage Gryffindor's Quidditch team, or taunting him in class. Such actions often read more like rivalry than deep-seated loathing. Rivalries, unlike mortal enmities, are built on competition and comparison. Draco's fixation on Harry reveals that Harry mattered to him in a way no other student did. Their relationship becomes even more nuanced when considering the Slytherin-Gryffindor divide. Both houses embodied opposing values in the Hogwarts narrative: cunning and ambition against courage and loyalty. Harry's repeated confrontations with Draco often played out as symbolic battles between the two houses, yet this polarization was part of the school's structure, not necessarily the boys' personal feelings. Imagine a different Hogwarts, one without the rigid division between houses. Could Harry and Draco have become friends? The possibility is not absurd. Both boys were intelligent, resourceful, and carried burdens that isolated them from their peers. In another life, they might have found common ground rather than hostility. The aftermath of the war further dispels the myth of eternal enmity. In the epilogue of Deathly Hallows, when Harry sees Draco at King's Cross with his wife and son, the encounter is not filled with bitterness or hatred. Instead, it is described with quiet acknowledgement. There are no insults exchanged, no lingering animosity. Each man nods to the other, a gesture of recognition rather than rivalry. This subtle moment underscores Rowling's message. The past is not forgotten, but neither is it eternal. They were not destined to remain enemies. They were survivors of a war, scarred but alive, each choosing to live on in peace. Fans often cling to the idea of Harry and Draco as archetypal opposites, the hero and the villain, but literature, especially Rowling's, rarely deals in such absolutes. The bathroom scene in Half-Blood Prince shows a boy crying, not a villain plotting murder. The Fiendfire rescue in Deathly Hallows shows an act of compassion, not vengeance. These moments strip away the simplicity of the mortal enemies narrative and replace it with something far richer. Two boys, both products of forces beyond their control, who collided again and again because of the paths carved for them. Quotations throughout the books reinforce this complexity. When Harry sees Draco's terror on the astronomy tower, Dumbledore's gentle words echo, "You are not a killer." When Narcissa chooses to protect Harry's secret survival in the forest, it is because of Draco, because her son mattered more than any ideology. And when Harry saves Draco from Fiendfire, Rowling emphasizes not their hatred, but Harry's instinctive choice to act with mercy. These quotes ground the idea that their story was not one of eternal enmity, but of intertwined destinies. The misconception that Harry and Draco were destined as mortal enemies often arises from the tendency to simplify narratives. It is easier to tell the story of the hero and the villain, of light and dark, than to accept the shades of gray. But Rowling's strength lies in complicating such binaries. Draco is neither purely antagonist nor ally. Harry is neither always righteous nor without flaws. Together, their dynamic illustrates the messy, complicated truth of adolescence and war. People are not simply enemies or friends, but individuals shaped by choices, fears, and loyalties. In the end, their rivalry serves as one of the most compelling threads in the series, not because it is a tale of hatred, but because it is a tale of what might have been. Harry and Draco were bound by fate to oppose each other, yet the narrative continually reveals glimpses of another possibility, a different world where their rivalry might have softened into reluctant respect, even friendship. This is why reducing them to mortal enemies misses the heart of their story. It is not about hatred lasting forever, but about survival, mercy, and the complicated bonds formed in the shadow of war. Number 20. Slytherins cannot have friends. It is often too easy for readers and viewers to dismiss Slytherins as self-serving opportunists, incapable of loyalty or genuine affection. The legend of the Serpent House is so bound up with ambition, secrecy, and dark magic that many forget to look deeper into the personal bonds that actually formed among its members. Yet when one follows the story carefully, one finds that friendship in Slytherin is not absent, but simply constructed upon different principles than the open-hearted camaraderie of Gryffindor or the easy inclusiveness of Hufflepuff. Their loyalty is selective, fiercely conditional, and rooted in shared goals, but that does not make it less real. It is this subtle dimension that changes the perception of Slytherin and proves that even within its shadowy reputation, threads of friendship run strong. Consider Draco Malfoy at the center of his circle in Hogwarts. He was not the solitary snake many believe him to be, but surrounded himself with a protective group of companions who reinforced his confidence. Pansy Parkinson, often described in the books with her high-pitched laugh and constant hovering at Draco's side, was more than just a fangirl. She acted as his defender in moments of tension, eager to support him when he needed social reinforcement. Even if her loyalty sometimes appeared shallow, it was consistent, a mark of attachment. Similarly, Millicent Bulstrode, with her stocky build and intimidating presence, stood nearby. In group conflicts, a reminder that Draco was never isolated. These figures did not orbit him randomly. They were the companions he chose, and in return he offered them status and inclusion. That is a form of friendship, though it may seem transactional because within Slytherin values, reciprocity is the glue that binds relationships. The presence of Blaise Zabini is another example. Often described as aloof and strikingly handsome, he seemed detached from the messiness of school feuds, yet he was still drawn into Draco's gatherings. In Half-Blood Prince, Blaise accompanies Draco on the train, and when Pansy and the others fuss over him, Blaise remains part of the circle, lending an aura of sophistication to Draco's company. His willingness to remain in that orbit suggests a mutual understanding. Draco valued Blaise's approval, and Blaise in turn accepted the advantages of belonging. This is a quieter form of friendship, less demonstrative than Gryffindor's overt bonds, but it still rested on the principle of shared identity and the reassurance of being part of a chosen circle. In Slytherin, the unspoken alliance often mattered more than dramatic declarations of loyalty. One of the most revealing moments of Slytherin loyalty is found not in Draco's school days, but in the desperate hours of war, when Narcissa Malfoy stands before Lord Voldemort in the Forbidden Forest. Harry lies on the ground, apparently dead, and Voldemort demands that she confirm it. "Is he dead?" Voldemort asks. Narcissa bends close, and in a whisper that resounds through the narrative, she says, "Is Draco alive?" Only when Harry confirms that her son is safe does she stand and lie to the Dark Lord himself. He is dead. This scene is monumental, for it demonstrates that Slytherin devotion is not to abstract causes or noble ideals, but to family, to blood, to those one considers worth everything. In betraying Voldemort to protect Draco, Narcissa embodies the highest form of maternal loyalty, and though it is narrower in scope than Gryffindor's sacrifice for the world, it is no less profound. The argument that Slytherins cannot be friends usually emerges from their reputation for betrayal, yet betrayal in their logic comes when the bond no longer serves mutual survival. The darker side of this truth can be seen in figures like Severus Snape, who outwardly betrayed Dumbledore to maintain his standing with Voldemort, yet inwardly remained committed to protecting Harry for the sake of Lily Potter. Snape's loyalty to Lily extended beyond her death, guiding his choices and defining his double life. Though not friendship in the conventional sense, this enduring bond shows the capacity of a Slytherin to anchor his existence around loyalty. However veiled it must remain, the key lies not in the absence of friendship, but in its selective, unyielding intensity once chosen. Another striking detail lies in the way Slytherins group themselves during conflicts. In Prisoner of Azkaban, when tensions rise around Buckbeak and Hagrid's lesson, the Slytherins rally quickly behind Draco after he is injured. While Draco milks the incident for sympathy, his housemates reinforce his narrative, sneering at Gryffindor's defense of the Hippogriff. It is easy to see this as collective malice, but underneath it is an instinct of group cohesion. They defend their own, regardless of the exaggeration. This instinct reflects the same tribal loyalty that underpins their friendships. Once you are inside the circle, your allies amplify your voice, not because they believe every word, but because unity itself is the weapon. Friendship in Slytherin also shows itself in their social rituals, often centered on shared ambition. Unlike Gryffindors, who bonded through acts of bravery, or Ravenclaws, who united over intellect, Slytherins connected by reinforcing each other's paths to advancement. A good example appears in the Slug Club, where Horace Slughorn, himself a Slytherin, gathered promising students. Within these gatherings, one finds Blay, Draco, and others maneuvering for influence, yet their networking is not purely individual. They celebrate each other's small triumphs, share gossip, and polish their reputations together. The Slug Club highlights a type of Slytherin friendship, a strategic alliance that strengthens everyone's prospects, creating a mutual support system rooted in ambition but tinged with camaraderie. The contrast with Gryffindor is striking because Gryffindor friendships are romanticized in acts of open sacrifice. Harry, Ron, and Hermione embody the archetype, friends who would die for each other without hesitation. Slytherin friendships, by contrast, are pragmatic and often invisible until tested, yet when tested, they reveal themselves with startling intensity. Narcissa's lie, Snape's lifelong devotion, and even the smaller loyalties among Draco's circle demonstrate that the serpent's heart, though hidden, beats fiercely for those it claims. It is important not to misinterpret. Subtlety for absence, nor pragmatism for coldness. Even the darker Slytherins demonstrate bonds that are indistinguishable from friendship. Crabbe and Goyle, often mocked for their dim-wittedness, nonetheless stayed faithfully beside Draco through nearly every escapade. They guarded him, laughed at his jokes, and followed him into danger, even when they did not understand the full stakes. Their loyalty was rewarded with Draco's protection and inclusion. In Deathly Hallows, their loyalty takes them into the perilous depths of the Room of Requirement. Though it ends in tragedy with Crabbe's death, the fact that he risked everything alongside Draco reveals a form of camaraderie that cannot be dismissed as simple servitude. Friendship can exist even in unbalanced dynamics as long as devotion flows in both directions. The Malfoy family itself offers another model of Slytherin loyalty. Lucius, Narcissa, and Draco may appear self-serving, but their choices in the end revolve around protecting one another. In Deathly Hallows, as the war collapses around them, the Malfoys abandon Voldemort's cause, no longer interested in ideology, but desperate to find each other. When Voldemort calls his followers to regroup, the Malfoys are seen searching frantically through the battlefield for Draco. That image of a family prioritizing reunion over victory demonstrates how loyalty in Slytherin channels into tight, exclusive bonds. It is not broad friendship, but it is unwavering attachment to those who matter. To dismiss Slytherins as incapable of friendship is to miss the subtle ways their bonds reveal themselves. Pansy's constant presence, Millicent's solidarity, Blaise' quiet approval, Crabbe and Goyle's brute loyalty, and Narcissa's daring lie all illustrate the ways the Serpent House defends its own. Their friendship is not scattered generously, but concentrated like a blade, sharp and selective. This is why many misinterpret it, because it does not mirror the sentimental gestures that define Gryffindor loyalty. But loyalty need not be sentimental to be real. There is also a lesson in the contrast between betrayal and devotion among Slytherins. Betrayal often came when survival was at stake, as when many aligned themselves with Voldemort. But devotion appeared when the stakes grew personal. A mother protecting her son, friends rallying behind their leader, followers risking their lives in dark corridors. Their moral code was narrower, their circle smaller, but within those boundaries, their friendship was deep. The misperception that they are incapable of it arises only when one applies the standards of other houses to Slytherin. By their own standards, their friendships are intense, sometimes suffocating, and certainly defining. Ultimately, Slytherin friendship thrives in the shadows, away from the spotlight. It is visible in small acts of solidarity, in the collective sneers during a Quidditch match, in the way their groups clustered tightly at feasts, in the loyalty of students to Draco, even when his choices endangered them. It is visible in the Slug Club, where alliances transformed into lasting connections. It is visible in the Malfoys' desperate search for one another. Friendship, in Slytherin's terms, is survival together, ambition shared, and devotion channeled into those deemed worthy. It is not a lack of friendship, but a different species of it. Perhaps the greatest irony is that the wizarding world, quick to condemn Slytherins, often forgets that these forms of friendship mirror its own prejudices. Just as wizards clung to their pure-blood families and trusted circles, so too did Slytherins. They reflected the society around them in concentrated form, valuing secrecy, protection, and ambition, but always with the knowledge that bonds matter most when the world grows dangerous. And it was in the darkest hours, whether in the Forbidden Forest or the burning ruins of Hogwarts, that these bonds revealed themselves unmistakably. Number 21. Magical objects are all-powerful. Of all the wonders in J.K. Rowling's world, nothing has sparked more fascination than the magical objects that seem to hold limitless power. Yet time and again, the story reminds us that even the most legendary artifacts bend under the same restrictions that bind wands and spells. Take, for example, the fabled Time Turner. At first glance, it looks like the ultimate solution to any obstacle, a small, delicate hourglass capable of bending the most fundamental law of existence. Hermione Granger was entrusted with it during her 3rd year at Hogwarts, using it to manage an impossible class schedule. But the novel reveals the dangers lurking in such meddling. Professor McGonagall emphasized that it could only be used responsibly, and later Dumbledore warned, "You must not be seen." This warning underlines the fragility of time itself. When Harry and Hermione used the device to rescue Buckbeak and Sirius Black, they realized how close they came to disaster. The lesson was clear. Even with time in one's hands, the universe had rules that could not be broken without consequence. The fragility of the Time Turner became all the more apparent when fan expectations collided with narrative reality. Many readers wondered why Dumbledore did not simply hand Harry such a device to prevent Voldemort's rise, or to save James and Lily Potter, but the books themselves undermine this fantasy. The Ministry of Magic heavily restricted their use, and the Department of Mysteries later saw most of the devices destroyed during the battle, in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Rowling notes that all the Time Turners were smashed in the struggle within the Hall of Prophecy. If time travel were truly limitless, the series would collapse under paradox. Rowling intentionally set barriers, not to frustrate, but to keep the world believable. The Time Turner exists as an extraordinary object, but one that highlights restraint rather than omnipotence. The Elder Wand stands as another example of myth clashing with reality. Advertised as the strongest wand ever crafted, a core piece of the Deathly Hallows legend, it seemed to promise invincibility. Grigorovich claimed ownership. Gellert Grindelwald stole it. Albus Dumbledore wielded it in his legendary duel against Grindelwald, and Voldemort later sought it as the final piece of his conquest. Yet the book delivers. A sobering twist. Possessing the Elder Wand does not guarantee victory. Voldemort's belief in the wand's supremacy blinded him to its true loyalty. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Rowling writes, "The wand's more trouble than it's worth. The wand is dangerous in anybody's hands." Harry's decision to return it to Dumbledore's tomb rather than claim it forever underscored the point. A wand, however powerful, is still an instrument. Its master's choices, courage, and intentions weigh far more than the strength it promises. Voldemort's failure with the Elder Wand also reveals an important truth about magical items. They reflect the flaws of those who wield them. Voldemort saw it as a weapon of dominance, not as a tool of connection. His ignorance of wand lore and arrogance about loyalty doomed him. When he attempted to cast the killing curse against Harry, the spell rebounded because the wand refused to murder its true master. Rowling allows the wand to carry a symbolic weight. It is not invincible but deeply bound by law and tradition. Readers may dream of such a tool, guaranteeing triumph, yet the text consistently rejects this fantasy. No artifact, no matter how ancient or revered, allows someone to step outside the limitations of morality, loyalty, or destiny. If the Elder Wand teaches about power's corruption, the Marauder's map speaks of the unreliability of even the cleverest magic. Created by 4 mischievous students, Remus Lupin, Peter Pettigrew, Sirius Black, and James Potter, it presented a miraculous design, a parchment showing the entire layout of Hogwarts, complete with moving footprints of everyone inside. Fred and George Weasley used it to sneak through the castle, and Harry relied on it to track Draco Malfoy during his 6th year. But the map was not infallible. In Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, the most glaring oversight occurred. The map identified Peter Pettigrew within the castle, but disguised as Ron Weasley's rat Scabbers, he passed unnoticed by all but Lupin. For years, the Weasley family housed a fugitive under their roof. The map's creators had endowed it with brilliance, Yet even it could not reveal the full truth without the right interpretation. This moment reflects an important storytelling principle. Objects may show information, but understanding still rests with the user. Harry, who saw the name Peter Pettigrew on the map, initially thought it was a trick. He could not comprehend how Pettigrew, believed dead for over a decade, could still walk the halls. The map delivered truth, but truth misunderstood might as well be falsehood. It is this very fallibility that saves the narrative from collapsing under magical convenience. Fans may claim that the Marauder's map solves mysteries instantly, but the book demonstrates otherwise. Human doubt, prejudice, and oversight limit its usefulness. Like every artifact, it is potent, but never absolute. Rowling consistently plants restrictions into every artifact to preserve dramatic tension. Consider the invisibility cloak, another of the Deathly Hallows. Gifted to Harry as a family heirloom, it protected him countless times, sneaking to the restricted section, visiting Hogsmeade illegally, and even evading Death Eaters. But though the cloak was extraordinary, resistant to wear and time, it could not solve every danger. Dementors could still sense presence through their chilling aura. Moody's magical eye could pierce the veil. And during open battle, a cloak could not stop a curse. The artifact served as a symbol of protection and humility, but Harry never believed it made him untouchable. The myth of perfection is broken once again. The Pensieve offers another angle on this theme. The enchanted stone basin allowed Dumbledore to store and revisit memories, immersing himself in past events as though watching them unfold. For Harry, the Pensieve revealed critical truths about Voldemort's past, Snape's loyalties, and even Dumbledore's own failings. Yet its flaw lay in perspective. Memories, though vivid, remained subjective. As Dumbledore explained, this is but memory, not the thing itself. Harry could witness but never alter what was shown. A memory could be tampered with, as Slughorn demonstrated when he doctored his conversation with Tom Riddle. Thus, even the Pensieve, so rich in knowledge, reminded readers that information is shaped, fragile, and far from divine revelation. The Mirror of Erised stands as perhaps the clearest metaphor for the limits of magical items. This mirror revealed not the future nor the truth, but the deepest desires of the heart. Harry saw his parents alive beside him. Ron saw himself as Quidditch captain and head boy. Dumbledore, with a weary sigh, admitted that he saw his family whole again, but its enchantment carried no promise of fulfillment. Dumbledore cautioned Harry, "It does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live." A fan might imagine the mirror as a prophecy machine or a guiding tool, but Rowling strips it of power. It gives vision, nothing more. Its danger lies in obsession, in mistaking fantasy for reality. If the most learned wizard of his age could fall prey to its illusions, how could anyone claim omnipotence through such an object? Even the Horcruxes, horrific as they were, proved the theme of limitation. Voldemort split his soul into 7 pieces, hiding them in enchanted vessels to secure immortality. A diary that could write back. A ring cursed with deadly force, a locket that spread despair, a goblet stolen from Helga Hufflepuff, the diadem of Ravenclaw infused with wit turned to poison, Nagini, his living companion. Yet every Horcrux had a weakness. Each could be destroyed by basilisk venom or fiendfire. Far from being indestructible, they embodied the fragility of Voldemort's plan. His obsession with artifacts only made him more vulnerable, because once his enemies discovered the secret, the objects that granted him supposed eternity became his downfall. The enchanted sword of Godric Gryffindor offers a counterpoint to this obsession. Infused with goblin craftsmanship, it absorbed the properties of anything that strengthened it, such as basilisk venom. This made it an invaluable weapon against Horcruxes, but even here it did not appear by command. The sword presented itself only to a true Gryffindor in need. Harry retrieved it in the Chamber of Secrets, and later it appeared to Neville Longbottom during the final battle. The sword's restriction emphasizes worthiness over possession. A fan might imagine wielding it at will, but Rowling writes a deeper law into its magic. Character, not control, summons power. These examples collectively dismantle the illusion of omnipotence surrounding magical objects. Each artifact, from the smallest trinket to the grandest legend, is bound by laws, conditions, and vulnerabilities. The broomstick can be hexed mid-flight, the howler can humiliate but not command obedience, and the enchanted quill can record lies as easily as truth. The wonder of Rowling's world is not that objects remove limits, but that they reflect human flaws, choices, and courage. The story of Harry Potter resonates because it resists shortcuts. Had artifacts been absolute, there would be no room for bravery, loyalty, or sacrifice. The Time Turner could not erase trauma. The Elder Wand could not silence love. The Marauder's Map could not expose treachery without belief. Each object invites awe, but also caution. The message is not that magic creates perfection, but that imperfection defines even the most magical of tools. When fans argue that Rowling's world allows for any outcome through magical objects, they miss the deeper design. Rowling created a universe where artifacts amplify, but never replace. They tempt characters. They rescue in moments of desperation, but they never rewrite the laws of magic. The rules of death, loyalty, and love stand taller than any spell or relic. What remains is a powerful paradox. The most captivating objects in the story are not those that solve every problem, but those that expose the limits of power itself. Even in the climactic moments of the saga, these lessons are reinforced. Harry, standing in the Forbidden Forest, did not carry the Elder Wand to protect him. He did not clutch the Marauder's Map or the invisibility cloak. What gave him strength was his acceptance of mortality and his trust in love. No artifact could have given him that. And when he faced Voldemort, it was not the wand, but his choice to disarm rather than kill that decided the outcome. Artifacts dazzled the eyes of fans and characters alike, but it was human will that shaped destiny. Rowling's narrative reminds us again and again that artifacts are extraordinary, but not absolute. The fans' temptation to imagine them as solutions to every obstacle mirrors Voldemort's own hubris. He believed a diary, a locket, a wand, or a stone would elevate him above law and death. He was wrong. The story insists that courage, loyalty, and love, not enchanted objects, are the forces that truly change the world. That is the quiet yet powerful truth buried beneath the shimmer of every magical artifact. Number 22. Fred and George were just jokers. Fred and George Weasley are often painted in the minds of readers as nothing more than the jokers of Hogwarts, the mischievous pair who turned classrooms into chaos and left teachers groaning in despair. Yet to call them merely pranksters is to reduce a far more complex and layered story. Their laughter was not simply entertainment. It was resistance, creativity, and a kind of courage that many overlooked until the darkest of times arrived. Every prank and every joke contained the seed of something larger, a refusal to bow to authority, a refusal to surrender individuality in the face of control. It is tempting to remember them as two boys whose pockets were filled with dung bombs and skiving snack boxes, but their legacy reaches much further than mischief. From the beginning, Fred and George demonstrated a sharp intelligence masked beneath a surface of humor. When they first revealed their idea for skiving snack boxes in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, it was clear that they had the instincts of inventors. The items they created were not simple tricks. They were carefully engineered products with real-world applications. A nosebleed nougat was not just a gag. It was a clever way to escape a dull class or evade suspicion. The twins were already operating like entrepreneurs in a school that never truly encouraged entrepreneurship. Their mind for invention was years ahead of their peers, and even Hermione, who often disapproved of their rule-breaking, admitted their magical skill could rival some of the brightest witches and wizards of their generation. Their business venture, Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, became more than a shop in Diagon Alley. It was a testament to their vision. They risked their entire future to open it, pouring their Tri-Wizard Tournament winnings, given generously by Harry, into the foundations of a dream that many had dismissed as childish. You don't want to waste your winnings, do you? Mrs. Weasley had once worried, believing their pranks would never amount to anything. Yet the shop quickly became a thriving hub, a place where laughter was not trivial but vital. It was not lost on anyone. That during the Second Wizarding War, when fear and suspicion spread like wildfire, Fred and George's store was one of the few places in London filled with light and laughter. The products they sold also carried deeper value than amusement. Their line of defense against the dark arts products, including shield hats and Peruvian instant darkness powder, became essential tools in resisting Voldemort's forces. Arthur Weasley himself, a man deeply loyal to the Order of the Phoenix, admired the practical value of his son's work. Harry noticed during his visits to the shop that Aurors were some of their most frequent customers. It was proof that the twins' skills reached into the realm of serious magic, magic that protected lives and gave people a fighting chance against Death Eaters. They were not just clowns with tricks. They were creators whose innovations shaped the resistance. The day they departed Hogwarts in a blaze of rebellion during Order of the Phoenix was one of the clearest moments of their philosophy. In a school suffocating under Dolores Umbridge's regime, when even speaking out of turn carried punishment, Fred and George transformed their exit into a performance of defiance. "Give her hell from us, Peeves," they shouted, leaving behind fireworks, swampy corridors, and a message that authority could not choke the spirit of freedom. This was not comedy for comedy's sake. It was a deliberate act of resistance against tyranny, one that inspired younger students like Ginny Neville and Luna to form Dumbledore's army. Through laughter and spectacle, they reminded others that rebellion could take many forms. Their role in the Battle of the Astronomy Tower and later in the Battle of Hogwarts further dismantles the shallow image of them as pranksters. They stood alongside seasoned fighters like Remus Lupin, Kingsley Shacklebolt, and Professor McGonagall, proving that their courage was equal to their humor. Fred's death during the Battle of Hogwarts was one of the most devastating losses in the series, not simply because a beloved character was gone, but because of what he represented. In his final moments, he was laughing, his spirit unbroken, reminding readers that even in war, joy is an act of defiance. The quote, "Fred's eyes stared without seeing. The ghost of his last laugh still etched upon his face," captures the painful irony of a life cut short while embodying what he had always stood for, joy in the face of fear. George's story after Fred's death is often overshadowed, yet it is here that the full weight of their legacy becomes clear. George, once inseparable from his twin, carried the unbearable burden of continuing their work alone. He returned to Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, transforming their shared dream into a monument of memory. Every product on the shelves became a reminder of Fred's spirit. For George, humor became survival. He kept the shop alive not because laughter was frivolous, but because it was essential. Customers still came, Aurors still bought defensive goods, and young witches and wizards still found joy in the creations of the Weasley twins. George turned grief into resilience, ensuring that the laughter Fred had carried into the world did not die with him. It is important to remember that Fred and George were raised in a household where material wealth was scarce, but love was abundant. Molly and Arthur Weasley could not offer their children the luxuries of money or status, yet Fred and George's ambition to create a successful business was driven not by greed, but by the desire to carve their own path. Their shop provided financial stability to the family and proved that a Weasley could rise above the prejudices often directed at them. The same boys who were once scolded for their lack of seriousness became the providers of security, not only for themselves, but for their entire family. One must also consider their role as older brothers and how their humor served as guidance. To Ron, who often struggled with insecurity, Fred and George's teasing could feel cruel, but it also taught him resilience. To Ginny, their encouragement and lightheartedness gave her strength, especially during her early years at Hogwarts. They modeled independence, daring Ginny to be bold, to stand tall in a world that often underestimated her. Their humor was not simply for their own amusement. It shaped their siblings, giving them confidence to face their own challenges. In examining their magic, it becomes clear that Fred and George were prodigies in their own right. Many students at Hogwarts learned spells from books, yet the twins constantly invented original enchantments, combining potions, charms, and transfiguration in ways that stumped even Hermione. Their portable swamp was so advanced that Professor Flitwick, a master of charms, left a portion of it intact as a tribute. The very fact that teachers recognized their skill, even in disobedience, shows how extraordinary they were. They were innovators in a world that often prioritized tradition over creativity. Their humor also played a psychological role during the war. When the wizarding world was collapsing into fear, Fred and George's presence reminded people of normalcy, of joy, of humanity. Laughter in such times is not weakness. It is medicine. Their jokes during tense moments, even in the darkest chapters, offered relief to their friends. Harry, who carried the unbearable weight of being the chosen one, found in the twins' humor a chance to breathe. They reminded him and others that life was worth fighting for, not merely surviving. Perhaps the greatest mistake fans make is separating humor from heroism. Fred and George wove the two together seamlessly. Their pranks at Hogwarts were practice for their later acts of defiance. Their inventions were not frivolous but deeply functional. Their shop was not only a place of mischief but a sanctuary of hope. And their laughter, far from being shallow, was a declaration that despair would never fully win. Their role in the story was not minor comic relief. It was a vital thread in the tapestry of resistance. Even their relationship with Percy Weasley, who often disapproved of their antics, highlights their depth. Percy, the serious and rule-abiding brother, often clashed with them. Yet in the end, when he reconciled with his family during the Battle of Hogwarts, it was Fred he stood beside when death struck. The irony is heartbreaking, for the brother who valued rules above all else shared one of his final moments with the brother who had broken every rule. This moment underscores how essential Fred and George were, not only to humor, but to the very soul of the family. In looking back, their story is a reminder that laughter is never trivial, invention is never small, and resistance can come in unexpected forms. The Weasley twins were never just pranksters. They were creators, fighters, visionaries, and brothers who used humor to carve out space for courage in a world darkened by fear. To dismiss them as mere jokers is to miss the truth. They were warriors armed not only with wands but with wit, and sometimes wit can be the sharpest weapon of all. Number 23. Snape hated Harry. Severus Snape's image in the world of Harry Potter has always been painted in stark, unforgiving colors. To Harry himself, from the very first day in the dungeon classroom, Snape appeared as a figure of relentless hostility. His eyes seemed to narrow whenever Harry entered, his voice carried a venom that cut deeper than any hex, and every point deducted from Gryffindor felt like proof of personal malice. Yet the greatest mistake fans often make is to reduce all of this to hatred for Harry as a person. The truth, when examined with the careful eye of memory and text, reveals that the contempt was aimed at the shadow of James Potter that followed Harry wherever he went, while beneath that bitterness lay a paradoxical form of protection born of devotion to Lily Evans. From the very first potions lesson in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, Snape's behavior was marked by sharp contrasts. He greeted the class with a speech that turned his subject into a matter of mystery and power. I can teach you how to bottle fame, brew glory, even put a stopper in death. Yet when he turned his gaze on Harry, the awe transformed into cruelty. He asked trick questions no first year could answer, ridiculed him for ignorance, and deducted points unfairly. To a young boy new to the magical world, it seemed like pure dislike. But for those who knew the deeper history, Snape's humiliation at James's hands by the Black Lake, his lifelong scars of mockery, it was not Harry he was addressing, but the echo of a father whose arrogance had once nearly destroyed him. Still, the story becomes far more complex when we look beyond appearances. Snape, despite his bitterness, was the very man who kept Harry alive from the shadows. One of the earliest examples comes during the Quidditch match against Slytherin in Harry's first year. when Professor Quirrell, secretly hosting Lord Voldemort, muttered a jinx against Harry's broomstick. The boy clung desperately as it bucked and tried to throw him. The crowd saw Hermione Granger rushing toward Snape, assuming he was the culprit. She knocked him over, breaking his concentration. But as later revealed, Snape had been chanting the counter curse all along, keeping Harry alive while risking exposure. His hostility in class hid the truth that he was guarding the son of his beloved Lily. Snape's paradoxical role continued into Harry's second year. When the boy was injured by the rogue bludger during the Quidditch match against Slytherin, it was not admiration that moved Snape, but obligation. He was among the first teachers to reach Harry on the ground, and though his expression betrayed annoyance, his actions confirmed a different reality. He ensured Madame Pomfrey had what she needed, and his vigilance over student safety was unshaken, even if he cloaked it under a mask of disdain. The pattern was always the same. To the world, he was cruel and unfair, but underneath, his hand guided Harry away from disaster. The third year unveiled even more striking contradictions. When Sirius Black escaped Azkaban, Hogwarts was tense with rumors and fear. Snape, carrying his personal vendetta against Black, might have wished Harry harm by proxy, given the boy's reckless attempts to sneak into Hogsmeade. Yet in the Shrieking Shack, when Harry confronted Sirius, Snape's reaction was not one of indifference. He stepped forward to shield the students, wand raised, risking his life. The bitterness in his voice could not erase the reality. He placed himself as a barrier between Harry and what he believed was a murderer. The resentment was genuine, but the instinct to protect was stronger. Perhaps no moment better illustrates Snape's duality than the events of Harry's fourth year during the Triwizard Tournament. When Harry was poisoned in preparation for the second task, it was Snape who brewed the antidote. He did not shower Harry with sympathy, nor did he seek thanks. Instead, he worked silently in the background, doing what was necessary to keep the boy alive. This act was not driven by affection, but by duty. His promise to Dumbledore, tied inseparably to the memory of Lily, required him to act, and he did so with an almost grim inevitability. Protection was his burden, and he carried it faithfully. By the fifth year, Snape's role grew even darker. Assigned to teach Harry occlumency, he was tasked with shielding the boy's mind from Voldemort's intrusion. Their lessons were grueling, humiliating, and filled with anger. Harry saw only cruelty in Snape's cutting remarks and invasive legilimency. But the purpose was clear. If Harry could not resist Voldemort's influence, the Dark Lord could use him as a weapon. Snape's methods were brutal because his fear was real. He understood better than anyone the cost of weakness before Voldemort. And though Harry resisted the lessons, the very fact that Snape endured the thankless task testified to his underlying concern for the boy's survival. The sixth year brought this contradiction into even sharper relief. Dumbledore trusted Snape absolutely, and in The Half-Blood Prince, Snape swore the unbreakable vow to Narcissa Malfoy, pledging to protect Draco and, if necessary, carry out Dumbledore's own death. When he ultimately killed the headmaster atop the astronomy tower, Harry's hatred erupted. "Coward!" he screamed, chasing Snape through the night, and Snape, with fiery eyes, answered, "Don't call me coward!" The fury was not born from Harry's insult, but from the weight of his mission, protecting the boy who despised him, honoring Lily's memory, and bearing his true allegiance beneath layers of scorn. In the final book, Snape's truth emerges in fragments. When Harry was nearly killed by Nagini at Godric's Hollow, it was Snape who left the sword of Gryffindor in the Forest of Dean. He risked exposure, following Harry under the cloak of invisibility and guiding him toward the weapon needed to destroy Horcruxes. Again, no gratitude was sought, and no credit was given. Harry never knew the hand that placed the blade in the water, but the pattern remained consistent. Snape's actions contradicted his apparent contempt, revealing a man bound by a promise far deeper than personal grudges. The culmination arrives in the memories Snape gave to Harry during his final moments. As Harry pored over them in the pensive, the truth shattered the boy's understanding. Snape's love for Lily Evans, pure and unwavering, had been the compass of his life. His bitterness toward James spilled into every interaction with Harry, but behind the anger was a man who had begged Dumbledore to keep Lily safe, who agreed to protect her son even when it meant living in the shadow of his enemy's child. "Look at me," Snape whispered with his last breath, gazing into Harry's green eyes, the eyes of Lily. Hatred had never been the true story. These revelations also shed new light on Snape's classroom cruelty. His insults about Harry's fame, his constant comparisons to James, and his dismissal of Gryffindor achievements were all the reflexes of a man trapped in his past. To Snape, Harry represented the triumph of James Potter, the boy who had bullied him, mocked him, and ultimately won Lily's love. Every sneer was a defense mechanism, a way of guarding his wound. Yet despite this pain, Snape still brewed antidotes, countered curses, and risked everything in secret to fulfill his vow. The irony is that Harry himself never fully grasped this until the very end. To him, Snape was the bitter professor who hated him without reason, the man who seemed to take joy in his failures. But when he named his son Albus Severus Potter, declaring that Snape was the bravest man I ever knew, Harry acknowledged the complexity. The supposed hatred was a mask, a shield concealing grief, guilt, and enduring love. Fans who insist that Snape simply hated Harry overlook the subtler reality. He was protecting him in the only way he knew how, through stern distance and veiled sacrifice. Consider the contrast with other teachers. Remus Lupin offered kindness, Minerva McGonagall showed stern fairness, and even Hagrid gave warmth. Snape's harshness stands out by comparison, leading readers and characters alike to misinterpret his motives. Yet his contributions to Harry's survival are undeniable. Without him, the Philosopher's Stone would have fallen to Voldemort, the basilisk venom would have claimed Harry, and the path to destroying Horcruxes would have been lost. The bitter mask served to hide these truths until the final revelation. What lingers in memory is the sheer complexity of Severus Snape. He was not a man of simple emotions. Hatred and love warred within him, both directed at the same boy for different reasons. The sneer was real, the bitterness was authentic, but beneath them was a current of loyalty that never faltered. Fans who claim Snape hated Harry mistake the surface for the depth. What he hated was James Potter's shadow. What he loved, silently and with torment, was Lily's legacy. And caught between those poles, Harry became both the curse and the responsibility of Severus Snape's tragic life. Number 24. The Heroes Never Killed. In the magical world of Harry Potter, many fans hold to a comforting illusion that the heroes we admire, the boy who lived, his loyal friends, and the Order of the Phoenix, never truly killed. They imagine Harry, Hermione, Ron, and others as noble defenders, always refusing to cross the line between resistance and bloodshed. Yet the reality is much darker. The saga, written with the tone of an epic battle between good and evil, does not allow its characters to emerge spotless. Death clings to their choices, their spells, and the very wars they fought. When looked at closely, the idea of a completely bloodless resistance unravels. One of the most striking examples appears in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Deep in the Department of Mysteries, Sirius Black faces off against Death Eaters in a chaotic, desperate duel. J.K. Rowling describes the clash with furious energy. Bellatrix's spell hit Sirius directly in the chest. He toppled backward through the ragged veil hanging from the arch. At first glance, Sirius is the victim. But before this moment, Sirius himself had been hurling curses with abandon. He knocked his cousin into the veil, sending her dangerously close to death, and forced other enemies toward that deadly barrier. The veil did not discriminate. Those who crossed it vanished forever. In the mayhem, Sirius used lethal force, even if cloaked beneath the chaos of battle. The veil, mysterious and unyielding, was not just an object. It was a threshold between life and death. Characters who fell through did not return. In the same battle, Harry himself fired curses indiscriminately. Rowling notes how he screamed, "Stupefy, stupefy, stupefy," watching scarlet jets of light slam into robed figures. A stunner may seem harmless compared to the unforgivable curses, but when fired in rapid sequence against unstable surroundings, it could easily kill. The room was full of spinning prophecies, falling glass, collapsing shelves. A body struck by multiple spells could break against stone or be crushed under debris. Though the text does not linger on it, Rowling makes it clear the outcome of battle is not neat. Death is an unavoidable shadow. By the time of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, the tone of combat grows more severe. Ginny Weasley, often romanticized as a fiery but gentle figure, takes her place among defenders of Hogwarts. In the final stand against Voldemort's forces, she does not hesitate. Defensive spells become offensive, sometimes fatally so. In the heat of war, Rowling writes how the defenders hurled curses that shattered suits of armor, blasted walls, and sent Death Eaters reeling into destruction. A reductor curse aimed at stone can explode it. The same force directed at a body would be catastrophic. Ginny wielded this magic without hesitation, her survival and that of her friends depending on it. The girl who once blushed in the burrow had become a combatant prepared to end lives. Hermione Granger, the embodiment of intellect and moral precision, was no less complicit. In Deathly Hallows, she unleashes a curse against Greyback during the Battle of Hogwarts. The werewolf, mid-attack, is blasted away with such force that he smashes into a wall. The text reads, Hermione screamed, "Confringo," and Greyback was blasted away from her. The curse, known as a blasting curse, is not gentle magic. Its effect on stone is devastating. If it had been a human body instead of a wall, bones would have shattered, life extinguished. Hermione, who always preferred books to blood, did not hesitate when pressed against death. Her survival instinct overpowered every lesson about restraint. Even Harry himself, so often imagined as the ultimate pacifist who only disarmed opponents, carried blood on his hands. The spell that marked his journey, Expelliarmus, was indeed designed to disarm, not destroy, but its ultimate use in the final duel with Voldemort proved lethal. In the Great Hall, surrounded by survivors and corpses, the boy who lived faced the Dark Lord. Voldemort cast Avada Kedavra, while Harry countered with Expelliarmus. Rowling's description captures the instant. Harry saw Voldemort's green jet meet his own spell. Voldemort's wand flew high, spinning through the air and into the Master's outstretched hand. Voldemort fell dead, struck by his own curse, rebounded upon him. Fans argue Harry did not kill. Voldemort's arrogance killed him. Yet without Harry's spell, the killing curse would not have reversed. His action, though defensive, was the direct cause of death. What matters in these moments is not just intent, but outcome. War does not pause to ask who meant harm and who did not. The world Rowling painted is one where even those fighting for good cannot escape consequences. To kill by accident, to kill by defense, is still to cause a death. When Sirius sent an enemy stumbling toward the veil, did he intend to end life? When Ginny cast a curse that might shatter a man's chest, was her goal murder? Perhaps not. But the story makes clear, survival required decisions that could not be softened. In war, morality bends under the weight of necessity. The very idea of using magic in combat suggests fatal consequences. Spells described as harmless in classroom settings acquire darker meanings on battlefields. The body-bind curse, Petrificus Totalis, may seem comedic when used on Neville Longbottom in the first book, but against an armed opponent, it leaves them helpless, defenseless, ready to be struck down. A stunning spell, Stupefy, strong enough to fell a centaur, could kill a human being with a direct hit. Rowling rarely dwells on gore, but she crafts enough detail for the attentive reader to realize the true stakes. Every spell cast in desperation is a potential death sentence. Consider also the duel at Malfoy Manor. When Harry, Ron, and Hermione were cornered, they fired curses at Lucius Malfoy, Bellatrix, and others. Dobby, the house elf, freed them, but not before chaos filled the air. Harry slashed at Bellatrix with a spell that could have cut her open. Ron hurled curses that shattered chandeliers. These were not playful sparks. They were weapons in the hands of teenagers forced into violence. Bellatrix ultimately killed Dobby with a knife, but not before she herself nearly perished under their assault. The war had already stripped away innocence. Molly Weasley provides perhaps the starkest moment of righteous murder. In the final battle, when Bellatrix Lestrange nearly kills Ginny, Molly roars, "Not my daughter, you bitch," and engages her in a duel that ends with Bellatrix's death. The description leaves no doubt. Molly's spell strikes Bellatrix square in the chest, and she collapses lifeless. This is not accidental. This is not defensive magic rebounding. This is a mother deliberately killing her child's attacker. Fans often excuse it as justified, but it is still killing. The line has been crossed, and Rowling does not disguise it. If Molly is permitted lethal force by narrative justice, then why not Harry, Hermione, Ginny, or Sirius? The distinction blurs. What emerges is a world where the good side holds back less than we believe. Rowling may soften the blow by choosing not to linger on corpses, but the deaths pile up nonetheless. When the dust of Hogwarts settles, the heroes are surrounded not by stunned enemies, but by bodies. Death Eaters, giants, werewolves, even Hogwarts defenders, all fallen. The war's brutality cannot be erased by selective memory. The illusion of moral purity is especially appealing to fans because it protects the ideal of childhood. Harry's journey begins in innocence, in wonder, with letters delivered by owls and feasts in candlelit halls. To imagine that innocence preserved through every book is to hold on to that comfort. Yet the truth is that by the later volumes, Harry and his friends have blood on their wands. Their victories are not clean. They bear responsibility for lives ended in the struggle. That is the cost of resisting darkness. One cannot overlook the ethical weight this places on the narrative. What does it mean if Harry killed, even indirectly? Does it diminish his heroism, or does it make him more human, more believable as a soldier in a terrible war? Rowling does not sermonize on these questions, but she leaves the evidence for us to ponder. Heroes, too, must live with the consequences of what survival demanded. They cannot wash their hands and claim no stain of blood. In this way, the story reflects the grim realities of conflict. No war ends without casualties inflicted by both sides. Harry, Ron, Hermione, and the members of the Order of the Phoenix were forced into violence, and violence has a price. To pretend otherwise is to miss the depth of Rowling's narrative. It is not a fairy tale of spotless champions. It is a saga where even the best must make choices that haunt them. This is why the myth that the heroes never killed cannot stand. The evidence is written in the text, hidden only by our desire for innocence. Number 25, spells always work the same. In the world of Harry Potter, one of the most common misconceptions among casual fans is that spells are mechanical actions, like pressing a button or pulling a lever. The films often reinforce this illusion by showing wizards uttering a word, flicking a wand, and instantly producing the desired magical effect. However, the books reveal a far deeper truth. Magic is not simply a formula, but an expression of the witch or wizard's inner state. Spells may be taught in classrooms and written in textbooks, but their success depends on far more than pronunciation. It is the caster's emotion, intent, and concentration that breathe life into incantations, shaping them into forces capable of healing, protecting, or destroying. Consider Harry's long struggle to master the Patronus charm, one of the clearest examples of how emotion defines magic. When Professor Lupin first introduces him to the spell in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Harry is instructed to think of a happy memory, point his wand, and cry, "Expecto Patronum." At first, all Harry can summon is a faint wisp of silver mist. It is not enough to repel the Dementors. The book notes, Harry tried to bring back the image of the first time he'd flown a broom, but the spell sputtered and failed. Only later, when Harry recalls moments of deep, genuine joy and hope, memories of his parents' love and the friendships he built at Hogwarts, does the Patronus take shape as a full-bodied stag. The stag is not simply conjured from technique. It is conjured from Harry's very soul, the embodiment of his resilience and emotional truth. This emotional dependency is not unique to Harry. The Patronus charm is notorious for being one of the most advanced defensive spells in wizardry, precisely because it requires not just magical talent, but emotional clarity. For example, Dolores Umbridge, despite her high position in the Ministry of Magic, was incapable of producing a Patronus that could last in the presence of Dementors. In Deathly Hallows, we see that she requires the protective power of a locket imbued with dark magic to compensate. Contrast this with a figure like Albus Dumbledore, whose Patronus, a phoenix, blazes forth with effortless brilliance. The difference lies not in the syllables of the incantation, but in the spirit with which it is cast. Dumbledore carries within him unwavering purpose and compassion, while Umbridge is consumed by fear and cruelty. Dark magic offers equally vivid examples of the intimate bond between spell and caster. Bellatrix Lestrange embodies the sinister truth that the Cruciatus Curse, the torture spell, cannot simply be performed by any witch with the right pronunciation. When Harry attempts to use Crucio against Bellatrix in Order of the Phoenix after Sirius's death, the result is a weak imitation of pain. Bellatrix herself taunts him. "Never used an unforgivable curse before, have you, boy? You need to mean them, Potter. You need to really want to cause pain, to enjoy it." Here, Rowling reveals a chilling rule. The effectiveness of such dark spells requires not just magical knowledge, but a willingness to surrender to cruelty. Bellatrix thrives in this regard, her sadistic delight feeding her spell until it becomes almost second nature. Harry, for all his rage, lacks the perverse pleasure necessary, and thus his attempt falters. The magic exposes his inner self, incapable of savagery. This principle extends to the most feared spell in the wizarding world, Avada Kedavra, the killing curse. In the films, it is often depicted as a green flash hurled by any villainous wizard, but the novels clarify that the curse only succeeds when the caster genuinely intends to kill. As Barty Crouch Jr., disguised as Moody, demonstrates in Goblet of Fire, even students can say the words, but they will produce. Nothing more than sparks without murderous intent. Voldemort wields the curse with devastating ease because he has no hesitation. He embraces death as a tool, an end he craves for others. By contrast, when Harry uses the spell in Deathly Hallows during the battle, it fails against Severus Snape. Harry does not carry the desire to murder coldly, and the spell reflects his inner conflict. Once again, Rowling reminds us that spells are not weapons separated from morality, they are mirrors of it. The variation in spell strength can even be seen in more common charms. When Hermione teaches Harry non-verbal spells in Half-Blood Prince, she insists that focus and mental clarity are vital. Merely knowing the Latin phrase is insufficient. Ron's early attempts often fizzle, while Hermione succeeds because of her discipline and concentration. The textbooks offer incantations, but practice shows that personality, patience, and willpower determine results. As Snape tells his students, nonverbal spells require a great deal of concentration and mind power, highlighting again that magic is not mechanical, but psychological. The wand becomes an instrument, but the music comes from within. In duels, the personal dimension of spells is even more visible. Take the famous confrontation between Harry and Voldemort in the graveyard of Goblet of Fire. The priori incantatum that binds their wands does not emerge from an incantation, but from the deeper connection between the two. Yet even before that, Voldemort's spells carry an edge that Harry's lack. Voldemort casts with venom, hate, and certainty, while Harry often relies on instinct and desperation. Harry's disarming charm, Expelliarmus, becomes his signature, not because it is inherently powerful, but because Harry invests it with his identity. His refusal to kill, his will to survive without becoming a murderer. For him, even a simple spell becomes mighty, because it reflects his deepest convictions. Rowling often highlights how magical instruction at Hogwarts fails to capture this complexity. Professor Flitwick may drill students in wand movement for Wingardium Leviosa, but true success comes only when the student merges intention with form. This is why Neville Longbottom, often ridiculed for poor magical skills, grows dramatically over time. Once his self-confidence blooms, his spells follow suit. During the Battle of Hogwarts, Neville wields the sword of Gryffindor with courage and produces charms with far greater effectiveness than his younger self ever could. Magic grows with the wizard, and that growth is inseparable from inner strength. Even mistakes in spellcasting illustrate the rule. When Ron attempts the slug-vomiting charm against Draco in Chamber of Secrets, the spell rebounds because Ron's broken wand disrupts his concentration and channeling. The incantation was correct, but the intent wavered and the tool failed. Similarly, when Gilderoy Lockhart tries to mend Harry's arm after the Quidditch accident, his lack of true competence and focus results in catastrophe, dissolving Harry's bones entirely. The scene is comical, but it underscores the truth. Without mastery of intention, spells can backfire disastrously. There is also the matter of emotional state in battle. Harry's anger often disrupts his concentration, causing spells to go awry. In Order of the Phoenix, when practicing occlumency with Snape, Harry repeatedly fails because his emotions overwhelm him. His mind is too clouded to resist intrusion. Here, Rowling again shows how the mental world dictates magical outcomes. A calm and focused wizard can achieve great things, but one racked by turmoil risks chaos. This is precisely why Voldemort fears Dumbledore. His calm mastery channels magic with unmatched power, while Voldemort, despite his raw strength, is vulnerable to the distortions of rage and obsession. The Elder Wand, often described as the most powerful wand in existence, also highlights this principle. It does not grant invincibility to whoever holds it, as if it were an enchanted machine. Its effectiveness lies in the allegiance it holds, reflecting once more the interplay between intent, mastery, and the bond between wand and wizard. Harry's refusal to use it for violence at the end of Deathly Hallows does not diminish its power. Instead, it affirms the idea that even the strongest magical tool is subject to the heart of its master. Throughout the series, Rowling consistently dismantles the myth of mechanical magic. She presents a world where every spell is a revelation of character. Hermione's brilliance comes not merely from memory of incantations, but from discipline and faith in her learning. Harry's strength is not his technical mastery, but his capacity to pour courage and love into even the simplest of charms. Voldemort's supremacy comes from his ability to strip himself of compassion, investing every curse with unflinching malice. Each character's magic is a biography written in sparks and flames, inseparable from their innermost truths. When fans recall the dazzling duels and glowing Patronuses, it is easy to imagine spells as uniform, predictable tools. Yet, the books insist otherwise. Magic is alive, reactive, personal. It demands that the wizard mean it, that the heart align with the wand. Spells are not buttons to be pressed, but mirrors reflecting the soul of the caster. The true danger and wonder of the wizarding world lies not in words or wands, but in the emotions and choices that fuel them. Number 26. All werewolves are dangerous. Under the pale glow of the Hogwarts moon, the image of a werewolf prowling the forbidden forest is enough to chill the bones of any reader. Yet what J.K. Rowling achieved through the character of Remus Lupin was far more layered than a simple horror trope. The assumption that every werewolf is a bloodthirsty creature waiting to attack is a misconception that many fans have unconsciously carried. Lupin's story shows us that lycanthropy is not a moral corruption but a burden of fate, one that can be managed with care, compassion, and understanding. His character embodies a truth that challenges the stereotypes not only within the wizarding world but also in the imagination of those who consume the story. He was living proof that being bitten by Fenrir Greyback did not erase one's humanity. In fact, his humanity shone brighter than that of many normal wizards who judged him unfairly. Lupin's introduction in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban is one of quiet dignity. He appears asleep on the train, shabby in appearance, his suitcase patched and worn, but when the Dementor enters the compartment, he rises with calm authority and defends Harry and his friends. The irony is stark. Here is a man labeled by society as a monster, and yet he is the only one who can banish the very real horror with a well-cast Patronus. The words Rowling uses to describe him: a very shabby-looking man, asleep, his head lolling onto his shoulder, stand in contrast to the fierce loyalty and bravery that he demonstrates time and again. This moment is a metaphor for the broader truth. Appearances and prejudices often deceive, while true strength is revealed through action. The stigma attached to werewolves in the wizarding world is a crucial factor in shaping how they are perceived. Dolores Umbridge, who enforced discriminatory laws at the Ministry of Magic, introduced legislation that made it nearly impossible for werewolves to find employment. Lupin himself describes these hardships with characteristic understatement, telling Harry, "You must understand that people are not usually very kind to werewolves." His words carry the weight of countless silent rejections, the sting of doors closed in his face, and the cruel isolation that society inflicted upon him. The idea that werewolves are dangerous is not born out of evidence alone, but out of deep-seated prejudice institutionalized by those in power. The tragedy of this prejudice is not only that it isolates individuals like Lupin, but that it also pushes others, less resilient or less supported, into the arms of darkness. Fenrir Greyback is the stark example of what happens when rejection breeds hatred. Greyback, infamous for his savagery, deliberately targeted children, hoping to spread lycanthropy as a weapon. His choice to embrace violence was not a predestined outcome of his condition, but a twisted response to the world's rejection. Rowling shows us that the disease itself does not define morality. Instead, it is the reaction of the afflicted to the cruelty of others that determines the path they take. Lupin chose empathy in teaching, while Greyback chose revenge and terror. It is telling that the Marauders, James Potter, Sirius Black, and Peter Pettigrew recognized Lupin's struggle and responded with extraordinary loyalty. They went so far as to become meninogui, illegal though it was, simply to ease their friend's suffering during full moons. This decision speaks volumes about Lupin's character. Only someone truly loved and respected would inspire such sacrifice from his peers. The friendship they extended was the antidote to isolation, proof that acceptance can nurture resilience. "They did not abandon me," Lupin recalls with quiet gratitude, and this memory is as important as any battle or duel. It shows that kindness can transform an otherwise unbearable burden into something survivable. The Wolfsbane potion invented by Damocles Belby is another element that underscores the truth of werewolf existence. It does not cure lycanthropy, but it allows the afflicted to retain their mind during transformation. Lupin uses this potion to keep himself and others safe, further proving that a werewolf is not inherently a danger. It is neglect, lack of resources, and societal rejection that create danger. If the wizarding world were more compassionate and invested in providing help rather than fear, the narrative of the dangerous werewolf would collapse. Lupin's ability to continue teaching and inspiring his students during his tenure at Hogwarts shows the profound difference that access to support can make. Harry Potter's own relationship with Lupin dismantles the myth further. Harry, who longed for guidance and fatherly care, found in Lupin a teacher who did not judge, who shared knowledge generously, and who treated him with respect. The lessons on the Patronus charm were not only magical exercises, but also emotional lifelines. Harry admitted that Lupin was one of the few adults who truly listened to him. If Lupin had been defined solely by his curse, Harry would never have been able to trust him so completely. The trust of a boy who had already suffered betrayal and loss reveals more than any ministry decree could. It reveals that the humanity of a person cannot be extinguished by a bite. The tragedy of Lupin's later years highlights the cruel persistence of prejudice. Even as a war hero, even as a member of the Order of the Phoenix, Lupin doubted whether he could ever be a proper father or husband. His fears about passing on his condition to his son, Teddy Lupin, are heartbreaking. "I am too old for her, too poor, too dangerous," he says to Harry about his marriage to Tonks. These words are not those of a monster, but of a man so worn down by society's judgment that he questions his worthiness to love and be loved. That he eventually embraced his family, and that Teddy was born free of the curse, was Rowling's way of showing that hope and acceptance can triumph even over lifetimes of stigma. It is impossible to ignore how the wizarding world's treatment of werewolves mirrors real-world discrimination. Those deemed other are often cast as inherently dangerous, untrustworthy, or unworthy of full participation in society. Rowling uses the werewolf condition as an allegory for illness, poverty, or any marginalized identity that elicits fear rather than empathy. When fans fall into the trap of assuming that all werewolves in the Harry Potter universe are dangerous, they unconsciously replicate the very prejudices the narrative critiques. Lupin's story was meant to challenge that assumption, and his quiet heroism is a rebuke to simplistic labels.